Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. So I've been sharing a few videos lately about how to navigate your way through all of this disinformation that is being presented to us at a stunning pace. And as homeschooling parents, it's really important that we understand the truth about things, so that we can understand that a lot of what we're being told is not true, and we're really at the point where it's hard to tell the difference between what is real and what is not. So, what I wanted to do today was I just wanted to do a quick video where I would just kind of point you in the right direction so that you can understand exactly where I am coming from when I talk about mainstream media and how they cannot be trusted. And I wanted to just talk to you about some things that maybe you could look into yourself. I will leave the links for everything that I'm going to show you in the description box. And you can start your own rabbit trail if you are not at that point yet where you understand just the extent that the mainstream media is not on our side. I'm hoping that I can encourage you to look into this for yourself so that you can see that no, you really can't trust these sources, whether it comes to homeschooling or whether it comes to life in general. So first of all, I'm just going to bring up Operation Mockingbird. So let me just read this really quickly to you. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but Operation Mockingbird was a secret campaign by the United States Central Intelligence Agency to influence media. Begun in the 1950s, it was initially organized by Cord Meyer and Alan W. Dulles. It was later led by Frank Wisner after Dulles became the head of the CIA. The organization recruited leading American journalists into a network to help present the CIA's views and funded some student and cultural organizations and magazines as fronts. As it developed, it also worked to influence foreign media and political campaigns, in addition to activities by other operating units of the CIA. And they're actually included on this page that, like I said, I'm going to leave the link in the description box. There are some declassified pages here. As you can see, there are 7 of them. And so I just wanted to go over the last page. I mean, if you want to look through these, you can definitely do this on your own. I don't want to spend too much time on it because this, I don't ever want you guys to just take my word for it. I want to kind of at least let you know what this stuff is, and then you can look into it, and then you can use that critical thinking and you can make your own, educated judgment on it. But what I wanted to read to you, it was just this one. I'm just going to read from this one really quickly. So this is one of the declassified documents. And it says, Project Mockingbird, a telephone intercept activity, was conducted between the 12th of March, 1963 and the 15th of June, 1963, and targeted 2 Washington-based newsmen who at the time had been publishing news articles based on and frequently quoting classified materials of this agency and others, including top secret and special intelligence. So that next paragraph goes through exactly what it is that they were doing in this Operation Mockingbird. But I just wanted to read this next paragraph about halfway down. It says, a number of other sources were partially or tentatively identified, but the short span of the activity precluded positive identification. It was observed that through these contacts, the newsmen actually received more classified and official data than they could use, and passed some of the stories to other newsmen for release, establishing that many leaks appeared under other bylines were actually from the sources of the target newsmen. So these reporters, these journalists were getting classified information from government employees, and they were supposed to be leaking these things to the public, things that, the government agencies that were passing this information along, things that they wanted presented to the public. So that's the first thing that, if you haven't heard of it, look into it, Operation Mockingbird. Now, what I wanted to go over with you was this, if you have not heard of this, the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012. Okay, and let's just read through this. I'm not going to read the entire bill, but again, this is going to be linked in the description box. You can look into this on your own. All right, let's just look here. General authorization. The Secretary and the Broadcasting Board of Governors are authorized to use funds appropriated or otherwise made available for public diplomacy information programs to provide for the preparation, dissemination, and use of information intended for foreign audiences abroad about the United States, its people, and its policies through press, publications, radio, motion pictures, the internet, and other information media, including social media, and through information centers, instructors, and other directors or indirect means of communication. So, in a nutshell, what that means is that they were opening the door to government-induced propaganda. Now, right here it says, except as provided in paragraph 2, the Secretary and the Broadcasting Board of Governors may, upon request and reimbursement of the reasonable costs incurred in fulfilling such a request, make available in the United States motion pictures. Now, remember, this is the government that can do these things. Make available in the United States motion pictures, films, video, audio, and other materials prepared for dissemination abroad or disseminated abroad pursuant to this act. And again, this is something that you really should read on your own. I'm just opening your eyes to this. Yes, this is government-induced propaganda. And I find it interesting that, where is it? There is a point where they're saying that they don't want it to influence anybody. And that's not the purpose, but that is the sole purpose of propaganda, is that when the government is presenting certain information to the public, of course they want the public to think something. And I found it funny that that they actually added that in here, that they didn't want it to be influencing what people think. Let me see. I wish I could find it now, but of course I'm not going to be able to. Okay, I found it. It says here, in general, no funds authorized to be appropriated to the Department of State or the Broadcasting Board of Governors shall be used to influence public opinion in the United States. And yeah, that's something that, again, I found that to be odd and kind of funny that somehow that made it in here when the whole point of presenting information to the public is because you do want them to think a certain thing. So anyway, you can think what you want about them adding that in, but again, this is something that you really should look into yourself. Now, the next thing that I wanted to show you is this is basically just a summary of the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. And I think that it's really important that, because, these bills that they make, even though you should read them, to figure out exactly what it is that they say, they make them very hard to understand at certain times. So I really do like when we can find summaries of them. So here, this one says, lifting of U.S. propaganda ban gives new meaning to old song. Okay, and it says here, though its ostensible purpose is to fund the U.S. military over a one-year period, the National Defense Authorization Act, better known as the NDAA, has had numerous provisions tucked into it over the years that have targeted American civil liberties. The most well-known of these include allowing the government to wiretap American citizens without a warrant, and even more disturbingly, indefinitely imprison an American citizen without charge in the name of national security. One of the lesser-known provisions that have snuck their way into the NDAA over the years was a small piece of legislation tacked on to the NDAA for fiscal year 2013, signed into law in that same year by then-President Barack Obama. Named the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012, it completely lifted the long existing ban on the domestic dissemination of U.S. government-produced propaganda. For decades, the U.S. government had been allowed to produce and disseminate propaganda abroad in order to drum up support for its foreign wars, but had been banned from distributing it domestically after the passage of the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948. However, the Modernization Act's co-authors, Representatives Mac Thornberry and Adam Smith, asserted that removing the domestic ban was necessary in order to combat Al-Qaeda's and other violent extremist influence among populations. let me just see. I'm just going to skim down to the things that are most relevant to what we are talking about. 5 years later, so remember it was signed into effect, I believe, in 2012, but it was supposed to take effect in 2013 because it said 180 days after the signing of it. But it says 5 years later, and this article was written in 2018. 5 years later, the effects of the lifting of the ban have turned what was once covert manipulation of the media by the government into a transparent revolving door between the media and the government. Robbie Martin, documentary filmmaker and media analyst whose documentary series, A Very Heavy Agenda, explores the relationships between neoconservative think tanks and media, told Mint Press that this revolving door has never been more clear than it is right now as a result of the ban's absence. In the age of legal weaponized propaganda directed at the American people, false narratives have become so commonplace in the mainstream and even alternative media that these falsehoods have essentially become normalized, leading to the era of fake news and alternative facts. Those who create such news, regardless of the damage it causes or the demonstrably false nature of its claims, face little to no accountability as long as those lies are of service to U.S. interests. Meanwhile, media outlets that provide dissenting perspectives are being silenced at an alarming rate. And I think that is something that you all have seen, especially like on social media platforms. Things that go against the narrative are suppressed. I'm expecting this video to be suppressed. I've been having issues with some people have been telling me that they have not been able to share my videos on YouTube. They have not been able to like my videos on YouTube. And we all know that they have, taken away my comments. I just had someone else tell me today that she was unsubscribed from my channel for like the second or third time now. These things are happening. And this is why I think it's so important that very often I will have people sending me emails or just messaging me, telling me to look at certain articles and their points of view. And the thing is that a lot of the articles that people send to me are from those mainstream media news outlets like the Washington Post, Fox News, MSNBC, and all of these other main media outlets that really are they're propagandizing us, and you cannot believe a single thing that they say. So I think that it's really important that all of you look into these things. And you can, again, I'm going to link this one in the description box too if you want to read the rest of it. But I'm just going to show you one more thing that I thought really went along with this. On one of my other videos, someone had mentioned that, and now this isn't going to work. Someone on one of my other videos had mentioned that what I was talking about reminded her of the movie Wag the Dog. And I actually saw this movie back in 1997 when it was first released, but at the time that I saw it, I just went because my husband wanted to see it, and we went with some of his friends. And yeah, I was in my early 20s. I had absolutely no interest in politics at all. And I think that I probably kept dozing off through most of this movie. I really remember hardly anything out of it. But, it intrigued me that she had connected what I was talking about with Wag the Dog. So I decided that I was going to read through what Wag the Dog was actually about again. And here is what Wag the Dog is about. 2 weeks prior to re-election, the United States president lands in the middle of a scandal. In need of outside help to quell the situation, presidential advisor Winifred Ames enlists the expertise of spin doctor Conrad Breen, who decides a distraction is the best course of action. Breen approaches Hollywood producer Stanley Motz to help him fabricate a war in Albania, and once underway, the duo has the media entirely focused on the war. Does that sound familiar to you? How many times in recent history has something pretty major happened only for us to be distracted by it almost immediately? The very first thing that comes to mind for me is Jeffrey Epstein. When all this stuff was going on with Jeffrey Epstein, when those people were, I believe it was when they were supposed to release the names They were supposed to release some pertinent information about his case, and all of a sudden we were hearing about like 2 or 3 school shootings that week. And then when after Epstein passed away and we had all of these accusations, Epstein didn't kill himself, and I fully believe that too. He did not kill himself. But as people were like talking about this and really making a lot of noise about what it really happened to him, then all of a sudden, isn't that right when we started getting distracted with this whole climate thing, and all of a sudden Greta Thunberg came onto the scene, and then all of a sudden everybody was talking about her, and they completely forgot. Okay, not completely forgot, but for the time being, people forgot about Epstein. And you see these things time and time again, and I want you to like really start paying attention and just watch when things that could be damaging, whether it's for politicians or whether it's for any important people in the world, when you see damaging things coming out about them, I want you to pay very close attention and see if something else does not happen, something major, to distract us from what's really going on. So many people talk about these things being conspiracy theories and everything, but the thing is that they're not. The Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, that's real. The Operation Mockingbird, that was real. And so our mainstream media, since 2013, it has been legal for them to propagandize those of us in the United States. So just please look into these things and trust the media with as much caution as you possibly can. Reserve caution when trusting them. That's all that I can really advise you to do. And you have to come to the point where I talked about this in another video. Sometimes it can be hard to tell who to trust, but it's way easier to be able to tell who not to trust. And when you look into these things, that makes it so much easier. Anyway, that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one over on Instagram because YouTube disabled my comments. And if you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. And I hope you have a great day.